So we all know Washington wants Canada locked into the full 88 American F-35 jets. Well, Ottawa now has opened a second fighter jet door with Britain, Japan, and Italy. And if Canada eventually walks away from the F-35, the Gripen may only be option number one.
It's exciting news for Canada. We are joining the Global Combat Air Program as an observer. That program is working on a sixth-generation fighter aircraft with Britain, Japan, and Italy, targeting 2035 for development.
Now, this means that Canada has placed itself at the table where the next generation of military aviation is being developed. That gives Canada information, access, and a possible future path beyond the American F-35 system.
And that is exactly why Washington will be freaking out and watching this closely. The United States has been pushing Canada hard to proceed with the full F-35 purchase, while warning that choosing another aircraft could create problems for NORAD, CUSMA, and the North American defense integration.
Now, you know they're still fuming that Mark Carney is looking at the Swedish Gripen and reviewing the F-35 decision altogether. Now, the announcement that Canada is opening discussions with 3 countries that are developing an entirely different future aircraft, man, that heat level is just going up to 100.
The question has expanded, everybody. Canada is no longer choosing between one American jet and one Swedish jet. Ottawa may be preparing to build a wider defense network with several partners and having several options. That could become the first visible signal that Canada is preparing to move away from the F-35s.
So what is this all about? Well, the announcement is tied to the Global Combat Air Program, or GCAP for short. Britain, Japan, and Italy are developing a 6th-generation fighter designed to operate with advanced drones, artificial intelligence, long-range sensors, and new weapon systems.
So the target is an aircraft for the 2030s and beyond, so it's not ready to replace Canada's CF-18s next year. That's why the wording is careful. Canada is entering as an observer.
Now, observer status gives Canada access to classified conversations and allows Canadian officials to study the technology, the cost, the industrial opportunities, and the military requirements before making a larger commitment.
So for viewers who want Canada to ditch the F-35s, this is the part worth watching. The door has been opened before Ottawa has finalized its decision on 88 American jets. Now, we all know we've already committed to some, but we don't necessarily need the rest. So the timing is important here. Now, that doesn't guarantee that Canada will leave the F-35 program, but it does mean that the government is keeping another path alive while the review continues. And that's important.
The Gripen is an existing aircraft that could be available sooner. The F-35, well, we all know it's already in production and operating with American allies. GCAP is a future platform that could eventually give Canada access to a new defense partnership. Those choices are very different. They involve different timelines, costs, capabilities, training systems, and relationships. But Canada now has more than one conversation happening at the same time.
And that is sending a strong signal to the orange buffoon down south. You're not the only game in town, Donald, and Canada is actively shoring up alternatives that will map out the country's future defense path.
For months, the public debate has focused on the F-35 versus the Gripen. We've covered it a lot on this channel. The Gripen has attracted certain attention because it gives Canada a European alternative to an American aircraft. It's also associated with Sweden, a country that has built a major aerospace industry while maintaining a more independent defense posture.
For Canada, that creates the possibility of a different type of relationship with different industrial and political expectations. The Gripen is still part of the conversation, but Canada joining GCAP changes the entire frame. The question now becomes much broader. So, does Canada proceed with all 88 F-35s? Does it buy the Gripen? Does it combine different aircraft? Or does it begin preparing for a future platform developed outside the entire American system?
That last option would take years, and it would be expensive. Canada can't simply walk into a 6th-generation fighter program and expect an aircraft to appear immediately. But This is the long play, right? Long-term defense planning does not begin when the aircraft rolls off the production line. It begins during the design process. And that's when countries decide which technologies they need, which industries will participate, and which partners will have influence over that final product.
So if Canada waits until the aircraft is complete, most of those decisions will already be made. Observer status gives Ottawa a chance to learn what's possible before the door closes. And for the first time, the public discussion includes a future fighter program beyond the F-35s or the Gripen.
Now, I know some people will hear the word observer and assume that Canada is just standing alone outside the room with no influence. But that is just too dismissive. In defense procurement, early access is very, very valuable. Canada can examine the program's requirements, understand the technology, and discuss where Canadian aerospace companies might contribute. You see, bringing it back to Canada.
Yeah, Canada has aerospace expertise. We have advanced manufacturing and a geography that creates a unique defense requirement. Arctic operations are different from defending a small European airspace, and Canada needs aircraft capable of operating across enormous distances in extreme weather with long patrol requirements. So those Canadian needs should be discussed before the aircraft is designed around somebody else's geography.
Now, the government has also said observer status involves no immediate financial or policy commitment. That gives Canada room to investigate the program without signing a multi-billion-dollar check before the aircraft even exists. It creates flexibility. Canada can learn about the program while continuing to assess the F-35 and the Gripen.
It also gives Canadian officials a chance to discuss technology partnerships and industrial participation. If Canada contributes to the program, Canadian companies could be involved in components, software, sensors, maintenance, or other systems. That could be a very different relationship from simply buying finished aircraft and accepting whatever access the supplier provides.
And the U.S. will understand the difference here. The F-35 system is not just a plane, it's a massive network of software, maintenance, training, upgrades, supply chains, and secure communications. Once Canada commits fully to that, it becomes connected to the American defense structure for decades. Now, that may be militarily useful, but it also creates that dreaded word, dependence. GCAP gives Canada a chance to examine whether its future should rely on one system or connect to a broader group of partners.
So this is where the American pressure campaign completely backfired on Trump, as usual, and all of his cronies. We all know that clown Pete Hoekstra has been flapping his gums all over Canadian TV, begging Ottawa to complete the purchase of all 88 F-35s. He's threatened us about the possible consequences of choosing the Gripen, particularly in relationship to NORAD and integration with American defense systems.
The F-35s even appeared over the ambassador's July 4th event in Ottawa. Disgusting. The visual message was impossible to miss, right? Washington wants Canada to remain tied to the American fighter jet network. But I think that public pressure has changed the political question. It's turned a procurement decision into a question of national control and national unity here in Canada.
So now Canada has to ask whether the discussion is only about aircraft performance, because it also has to ask how much freedom Canada will have over upgrades, software, maintenance, weapons, and future operational decisions.
Now, the objective here is not to replace one dependency with another. The objective is to give Canada enough relationships that no single partner can dictate every decision. That is the continuing shift that Canadians have been watching. This country is slowly creating more room to maneuver outside the traditional American orbit. There are several possible outcomes here, right?
Yeah, Canada could proceed with all 88 F-35s and use GCAP as a long-term technology partnership. That would preserve American interoperability, but it would give Canada access to future development.
Or Canada could reduce the F-35 order and combine it with the Gripen. That would create a mixed fleet. Although, we have to remember mixed fleets bring additional costs and training challenges, but it does move us away from U.S. dependence.
And Canada could also cancel the remaining jets, go with the Gripen, and use observer status to prepare for a future aircraft outside the American system. That would be the most dramatic change, and it would take the longest, but it may be the most future-proof of them all. The key development is that Ottawa is no longer limited to one immediate answer.
Yeah, the possibility of moving away from the F-35s have become more credible because Canada is building alternatives before making that final decision. And hey, maybe that was the plan all along.
I think this could be a trade play here where Mark Carney uses the F-35's contract as leverage for the CUSMA negotiations. Maybe that's why we've been waiting so long for a decision.
And I know the strongest criticism will come from people who say Canada cannot choose an aircraft simply because it wants to distance itself from Washington. And I get that. Fighter jets are military equipment, not political campaign signs. Canada needs an aircraft that can defend its territory, patrol the Arctic, communicate with NORAD, and operate alongside allied forces.
I still can't wrap my head around why we would use one, though, from a country that is threatening to annex us. But I digress.
But we have to remember, this aircraft has to be a lot of things. It has to be available. It has to be affordable to maintain. Canadian pilots and technicians have to be trained to use it. And the supply chain must function in the middle of a crisis. Those are practical requirements, and no government can ignore them.
Okay, but interoperability does not automatically mean permanent dependence. Canada can work with NORAD while still strengthening relationships with Britain, Japan, Italy, Sweden, and other partners. A larger and more capable Canadian Air Force could make Canada a stronger partner inside North American defense. And Canada would bring more of its own technology, more of its own industry, and more of its own strategic choices to the table.
The Gripen may still be part of the final answer. I think it will be. The F-35 may still be part of the final answer. But Canada now has added another option that didn't exist in the public debate a short time ago. And that option continues to become increasingly important as the relationship with the U.S. continues to deteriorate and go downhill.
So we want to hear your thoughts, and I think I know what you're going to lean toward. Should Canada proceed with all 88 F-35s? Build a mixed fleet with another aircraft, or move to a future fighter program with Britain, Japan, and Italy?
And do you think that this observer status is the first real signal that Canada is preparing to move away from the F-35?
Drop your thoughts in the comments, and while you're at it, check out the pinned comment for all the fun stuff like our merch, our Substack, and our private Facebook group.
And don't forget to give this a like, a hype, and a share so other people can weigh in on this as well.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and we shall see you tomorrow.
Ciao for now.